Good morning, everybody, and welcome to day two of the connection. My name's Kevin Rohn. I'm the Senior Director of Client Success here at Carnegie, and so happy to welcome you all to this session, which is a research briefing on connecting to the complex adult learner, which I'm sure many of you will find as a exciting topic. The speaker for this session is Jim Fong, who's the Chief Research Officer at UPCEA. So Jim, welcome. Before we get started, there's a few things, housekeeping items that I wanted to share, which you probably have heard some of these yesterday, but for those that are new to join in session today, this will be recorded and we're going to be providing links to the recordings to all attendees by the end of this week at some point. Just so you all know, you are all on mute and off camera. So while the video streaming window you're seeing currently offers both Whova and Zoom functionality for chats and Q&A. We just ask that you please use the Zoom chat and Q&A if you do have questions along the way, and we will hopefully have time at the end to get to your questions. This will absolutely allow the speakers and our support team to more efficiently respond to your questions at the end of the session. So please hold them until use the Zoom chat feature for any questions that you might have. As well, if you have any questions or need help during the conference, you can email us at conferences, that's with an S, at carnegiehighered.com, or message us in the Whova app through the Ask Organizers Anything section of the community board. And finally, we certainly encourage everyone to be social during the session. So if there's anything that you want to share, use the hashtag #TheConnection and tag Carnegie HQ at Carnegie HQ for any of your posts that you do regarding today's session. So with that, I'm excited to introduce Jim Fong. Jim, it's all yours.
Thank you very much, Kevin, and thank you very much, Carnegie, for having me back again. My name is Jim Fong. I'm the Chief Research Officer at UPCEA, as Kevin mentioned here. And prior to UPCEA, I've been with UPCEA now for about 15 years. Prior to that, I was at Penn State University working for their World Campus as the Director of Marketing, Research, and Planning here. And my job at UPCEA is really to provide a lot of research to the member community. UPCEA is probably about 110 years old now. We have about 400 university members and about 50 corporate partners, Carnegie being one of them. And my job here is to really provide information into our memberships, into the field of education. And to do so, we partner with folks like Carnegie and other members, and we conduct our own research. And this is my short, shameless plug just to show you some of the stuff that UPCEA does. And this is the most recent white paper library. We've done about 8 or 9 white papers over the last 16 months, and these are some of the things that you can get at. If you're an UPCEA member, you should have no problem getting through our portal, or you can let me know, and I can make sure that I can check to see if you're a member. If you're not a member, just email me directly at the end of today's presentation. My email address will be there, and you can email me. And if you can't get behind our firewall, if it's firewall protected, I'll send it to you. It's not a big deal. And some of our corporate sponsors also have the reports on their websites here. We're doing some really interesting work, which I'll talk to you more about. But in addition to partner research, we also do a great deal of our own research. We have a study going on right now on how our members are organized. And basically, most of them are professional continuing online education units. But how are they staffing? How are they developing their staff? What are the issues they're tackling? How are they doing their marketing role? How are they budgeting? So that's some of the things that we're dealing with. But we also, and those are member-wide surveys across our 400 members here. But we also do quick snap polls too. We try to even though these are quick biased surveys because people just kind of self-select into it, we touch upon a number of different topics that maybe an institution is being challenged on non-credit instruction and compensation. So we'll do a quick study for them, and we'll do 120 people respond to that survey. So, but in order to get where we're getting at, I wanted to focus in on the kind of the headwinds of higher education first. I'm going to apologize in advance because I go really fast and I'll need to catch my breath on occasion. But I wanted to kind of paint the picture of how do we communicate with today's adult learner or today's learner in general. One of the things that we're finding out here is the adult learner is getting younger, and the traditional student is putting off education at some points. And I'll share with you some slides on that. We're getting a little bit of a convergence happening with the traditional student and the non-traditional student, the adult learner, because we're also finding out that, and I'm going to try to release some research on this soon. There's some data out there that shows that what percentage of 18-year-olds directly out of college are going into online programs. So that's been increasing for the last 3 years as well. So all of this stuff is happening here, making things very difficult. I also have a little bit of a bent or a bias that today's 18-year-old and today's online student, they're some of the most informed, fickle students that we'll ever meet. They're very much known for being independent, communication challenges, and whatsoever. And there's been a lot of research also discussed that they have some, either they're very more open toward admitting so, or they have truer, greater challenges with mental health, and so they're more willing to disengage with communications quicker as a result, such as buying a car, going to college, or doing something, or accepting a job. There's a lot of research out there that shows that the young person is when they make that communication, is their communication as strong as previous cohorts. So there's a lot of challenges in higher education right now. Let me just share with you some other challenges, and then we'll kind of roll into some of the new research. Some of the challenges include we have a perception or a decline that we're losing confidence in higher education. This is a Gallup survey which shows in 2015 more than half of the people surveyed had a great deal of confidence in higher education. And in 2023, that number is down to about 1 in 3 now. So what we have here is we have increasing tuition rates, but we also have an economy that's in flux. We're moving toward an automated economy. And so a lot of young people and their parents are saying, is college really preparing me for this or not? And we've also got a politicization of higher education too. We know this because we're just days away from election, and we're seeing education being looked at as not necessarily a positive thing. But that's a fault of also higher education returning on investment and being in alignment with curriculum. So there's a lot of things playing against higher education as well. So we've got some real serious headwinds here. The other thing that's playing into this here is not so much the college students that are moving into our system now, but the next generation here or Generation Alpha, not necessarily Generation Z, but Generation Alpha is really questioning education because they're being brought up by millennial parents who, sometimes weren't greeted all that well by higher education, especially during our recession in 2008. There's a lot of things that are challenged here where millennials, they came out of college with a lot of debt and not necessarily getting jobs right away. And so I think that there's some challenges right now toward perception of whether or not higher education will deliver in the future. I think higher education can change that, but they need to be willing to make some big changes. So we've got a very skeptical and informed traditional college student and also non-traditional student or adult learner. So we have another situation that's coming here. This is a warning sign more than anything. If you look at high school graduation rates over the last 10 years from 2011 to 2021, we should have more college students coming into our system, but we're not. We're graduating a high number of students, and we've got the numbers to prove it. 3.8 to 3.7 million students in education, ready for higher education, but they're not engaging higher education at the same rate. The next slide shows it. If this is within 9 months after graduating, what percentage goes on to a 2-year or 4-year institution? So if you look, the 2-year institution, that went down from a high of 29% in 2012 to a 19% in 2021. Also, the same thing happened here in 2016. We had 46% of high school graduates going to college within 9 months, and that's down to 43%. So what we've got is we've gone down from a high of 70% of college graduates high school graduates going down to 62%. So while we're producing more high school graduates, they're not coming to college at the same rate. That's a huge red flag. So what actually happened during college enrollments is the following. Here, from 2010 to 2023, we lost a few million students for college, for entering college here, or they left college for a variety of reasons here. We also had a pandemic situation happen as well. So what we're actually in, fortunately, online degrees and online enrollments help soften the blow here. Otherwise, we would have lost more college students. So you can see the numbers there, and it's not necessarily a pretty number here moving forward. We had signs that we should be having more college students, but they didn't enroll. So we're faced with a lot of challenges in the future, and I did a brainstorm. Some of it's biased in terms of my own opinion. Some of it is also based on research. So we have fewer traditional age college students. We know that. That's called the demographic cliff. And that's basically what I showed you. All the research I read show that we have a fickle and fragile yet informed cohort, and that's Gen Z. And the other number that plays into this here is that the adult learner now has gone from 5 years ago, they were 27.4 years of age. Now they're 25.6 years of age. So our adult learner is getting younger, and that falls right into that very challenging Gen Z cohort. We have ample adults, but they're distracted by other priorities. We have a huge some college no credential audience there. We have people challenging whether or not our curriculum is ready for an AI economy here. Millennial and Gen X millennials and Gen Xers are decision makers in terms of employment, reimbursement, training dollars being spent, and a lot of the research that UPCEA has done shows that employers don't necessarily see us for training or professional development or certificates. They see us for degrees. So we have a misperception. So one of the other things that college is being called on here is, why would you assume $110,000 of debt or $40,000 of debt if you have no guarantee of ROI? And that plays into the AI evolution that's coming. So, and there's also competitive alternatives to degrees. We know that there's certificates, there's non-credit boot camps and whatsoever. So we have a lot of different challenges here. One of the things I want to point out here, rather than reading off this whole list here, is that we have less discretionary income for adult learners as well. Adult learners could save higher education. We're the college model was really based on 15.1 undergraduates and 3.2 million graduate students here. It's really based to serve, the model is built really on 18 million students. However, we've got over 40 million, some college no degree, that have left higher education. So we have a lot of these individuals that could come back and save higher education, but we're still promoting that 120 credit model here. So some of the things that we have challenges in front of us are our generational challenges. There's a lot of stuff out there in the media and being debated that, young people don't save enough money. They spend all their money on Starbucks and avocado toast. That's not true. I'm doing a lot of research on the economics of the adult learner. In 1990 versus 2024, the adult coming out of college or high school could afford a car. They could afford a down payment on a house, actually, if they were employed. They had disposable income at the end of the day. And even if you were a high school graduate and you were employed, in a service job or a labor-related job, your pay was actually strong enough, especially if you had a two-income family, to be able to put a down payment on a house. In 2024, that's not even the case. We've got a lot of challenges just with basic commodities. Price of eggs has risen for 400%. Milk has doubled its price. Actually 300% for eggs. Chicken has actually increased by 400%. Milk has actually increased, and the price of gas has tripled. So these are all real numbers adjusted for inflation here. We also have home prices as well have increased. The average home price in 1990 was $79,900 now. It's over $350,000 now. Median car price was about $10,000. Now we're up around $35,000. A lot of different challenges that we have in front of us. So basically, this next wave of adult learners coming out of high school, coming out of college, can't really afford they can't afford to have cars. They can't afford to have homes. So what they do is we have a sharing economy. And so we have adults that have left college with debt. Will they come back in? There's some things that we can do to save that. And that's what I'm going to talk about a little bit more of. So, what I really want to talk about now here is will higher education enrollments continue to plunge? And I'm actually saying that I actually think that undergraduate enrollments, and I've kind of taken some nut lines and I extrapolated them out. At the current rate here, we will go from 15.2 million undergraduate enrollments down to about 14.5 by 2030. It could be even faster. Hard to tell here, but on a straight line regression model, we've got about 14.5 million learners within higher education. I think that we can really grow the graduate market, and I think the graduate market will grow at some point. I think it's really kind of an interesting thing, and I think that's where colleges and universities have an opportunity. Let me talk about the first opportunity next, and that's the adult learner. So this is 2023 data, but 15.1 million traditional students. We have in total, with a degree of those that are not 25 or older, 93 million. They could go on, and some of those folks have got a master's degree, but some of those folks could go on to earn a master's degree. I'll talk about that shortly. But the big group is the 40.4 some college no degree. And when you take out the those that are 65 or older, we still have 38.6 million. And so we have a lot of people with some college no degree that could benefit from higher education. They could benefit from a stackable pathway. One of the things that if you go into the UPCEA library or you look at our research, we're really focused in on stackable pathways. And we really feel that you might not necessarily have to increase prices at your college, but if you make a modular where it's not a 120 all or nothing model here, that they can earn certificates on the way while they're working, then we think that this could save higher education. We believe that credit or non-credit certificates can save higher education. Non-credit certificates that you could turn into credit, I think will happen during an AI kind of economy here. I think AI will tell somebody that, wow, you took that boot camp. That's worth 1.7 credits toward a college degree. This 120 credit college degree model, this 120 credit college degree, bachelor's degree, I think is an antiquated model. It was developed about 100 years ago. And it was a metric that says if you did 120 credits based on seat hours or whatever, you're probably very highly probable of being successful in our economy. That's changed. We have outcomes, we have AI, we have a lot of things that could tell us otherwise. So I think certificates are a good compromise, or a stackable certificate is a good compromise. So I think this is one way that we could save higher education. So I want to just quickly tell you where we're at. We're actually seeing the first bump from credit enrollments since the pandemic. We had a downturn of credit enrollments coming out of the pandemic, but this is based on spring numbers here. Fall numbers are still down, but the spring numbers showed that we were increasing in terms of growth, in terms of undergraduate certificates and graduate certificates. The other growth area was associate's degrees. And if you think about not to be disrespectful to community college here, but if you think about a bachelor's degree, an associate degree is a certificate or a stackable degree on the way to another degree. So there we go. So I think we're showing a lot of growth there in the spring semester. We hope that that'll show in the fall National Student Clearinghouse numbers as well. But the fall 2023 did not. We're hoping the fall 2024 shows a similar pattern. I don't know if it's really sustainable, to be honest with you. I think this is post-pandemic numbers. The other number that's inflating this here is dual enrollment. High school students taking college classes for free or next to nothing. That's playing, and community colleges are finally seeing that bump back because they certainly felt a lot of the effects of the pandemic. So let me get into the research now. Now that I've painted the picture here, we've got a very complex adult learner here. And I'm focusing really on three pieces of research. The first one is with a company called Straighterline. And Straighterline, during the pandemic, I had Straighterline. I asked Straighterline whether or not they wanted to partner on some research. And we partnered on 4 studies now. The 3 studies, you can find this on the web. You can just Google UPCEA and Straighterline and you'll find these. While we were in the pandemic, we wanted to find out why they left. Coming out of the pandemic, we were looking at their perceptions about transferring credits. And then a year or 2 out of the pandemic, we looked at why they disengaged and how did they return back. Now we're doing more research about motivations and readiness. What makes somebody that's disengaged from their college ready? So this new research, which should have come out a few weeks ago, you should be able to find it, but if not, reach out to me. But it's all about motivations, hurdles, and readiness. We actually took our statisticians and we created a readiness index. And I'll share with you about what's driving that. But we're learning a lot about their segmentation in terms of being an adult learner and what is making them more ready than other cohorts. And so the study was basically with over 1,000 individuals, and it took place from June 7th to 11th, 18 to 64 years old, and they're no longer enrolled in a college or university. Most of these individuals are 45 years, actually 3/4 of them are 45 years of age or younger. And so they're not old, basically. A lot of these students are in their 20s and 30s. So here's one of the major findings that I wanted to share with you is that we asked them questions, and there's some differences, obviously based on age here. We asked them questions like, before enrolling in the degree program, I believed I needed a degree to achieve my professional goals. Before enrolling in my degree program, I believed I needed a degree to have a successful career. Before enrolling in my degree program, I believe I needed a degree to prove my value to employers. And then we asked them, currently, even without a degree, I believe I need a degree to achieve my professional goals. 34, 30, and 20%. So there's a gap here of 54, 50, and 47, now that they've been in the workplace on average about 11 years. And so that's actually kind of playing into this, where they've been out there, they've been able to be successful. Could they be more successful? Probably with a degree, but a lot of that's on an individual basis. But I'm thinking that between 1 in 5 and 1 in 3 have been able to carve out a very, very successful career. However, there's another 50 or so percent that believe that college is still a very valued place to be. So this tells me that there's we've got to get to them soon, but we've also got to tackle a number of challenges. So one of the things that we found out, and this is no surprise, you folks are in the field, but it's affordable cost and tuition, it's financial aid. It's one of the things they also want to know is, by the way, this chart is degree programs and technical and community college, vocational colleges. So we wanted to separate the two of them. You can see some differences there. So the factors that are less of an issue here for financial aid are coming more so from those with degree. They have a higher debt burden. Those in community college, technical, or vocational are less likely to have that concern, even though they do have financial concerns here, but it's not the same magnitude as those in college. You also see ability to transfer credit here. We also learned that there's a myth out there. When we've done some qualitative research, we also found out that there's a lot of people that believe that their credits cannot be transferred to another institution after 10 years or to their existing institution. There's this urban legend. Some institutions have that, but most of them do not. They'll accept credits, for an indefinite amount of time. So there's also things about, does this group believe in, the brand alone is not going to get them back into it. So there's a lot of other things that could be done along the way, such as badges and having better communication. I did some research for an Indiana university, and I had like a dozen or 14 students in my focus group. And one of the things that a few people told us is that their alma mater, not their alma mater, the institution that they left never asked them back. So they had self-esteem issues as a result. They said that I'm unwanted, I'm not worthy. But the institution really wants them back. They just never embrace them back. They never welcome them back. So there's a lot of stuff that could be done there. The research that you'll also see is that, when they decide to ultimately enroll into a degree completion program, there's a lot of factors that kind of get in their way in terms of applying. Why do you decide not to apply to a degree program? And a lot of them we can control. A lot of they have a lot of personal life challenges, or they have financial cost issues, but there's a lot of things that we can control as institutions. They didn't have time to apply. And we have come across some crazy application and inquiry processes through institutions, websites, and CRMs. I wasn't sure the program would help me achieve my goals. 1 in 5 there. Institution failed to communicate clearly with me. That's one of the things that we find out constantly. And the application process seems confusing. Although it's small, about half of the individuals that choose not to move on to a degree completion program, we can control. So we've developed this readiness index scoring system here, and we've kind of balanced it around, a midpoint of 50. And so it's really kind of difficult without having another half an hour to explain our results of this. So I'm not too sure. I know our results from Straight Align have been released. I'm not too sure when our readiness scoring report has been released. It's going to be released very soon if it hasn't. But what we're actually finding out here is that when we had our stat people look into this, they actually found 3 major factors that clustered. There's a mental routine readiness factor, which was the most predictive of whether or not somebody's going to be ready. It's being a time manager, handling stress, being adaptable, access to environments conducive to studying, willingness to invest time and effort, open to changing routines. The next 2 are trust about the institution. The institution communicates clearly, trust of higher education in general. So there's a lot of different challenges there. So there's other things that we could actually be looking into. The value of the degree. If they value the degree, they'll be more ready to obviously reinvest into it. So we've rerun these models a few times with or without some of these variables, but it's a really challenging situation for the learner to be part of. So this is what our stat people have told us, but we're going to be releasing this more in general. And then we've actually segmented it based on gender and age cohorts as well. So a lot of this research you'll be able to get at you'll be able to get at most of it, if not all of it, soon. The other study that we have is coming from a company called Collegius. And one of the things that we did is that we surveyed 2,000 individuals, 1,000 completed the survey, and it's those that will re-engage with higher education after earning a bachelor's degree. So let me actually just revisit one thing for you. Remember this chart here where I showed you enrollments, undergraduate enrollments being at 15.2 and graduate enrollments being at 3.1. One of the things that blows my mind is that from 2010 to 2023, we've only added a few 100,000 graduate students. I mean, why is that number flat? Why is that number uniform? This is what's happening in the undergraduate market. The number in 2010, we had 35 million people that had finished that held a bachelor's degree as their terminal degree. In 2024, we have 50 million people with a bachelor's degree as their terminal degree. So why haven't we grown our graduate enrollments? So I look at this as being one of the biggest yellow flags for higher education regarding the economy and regarding access and building infrastructure and systems. What we should have been growing this thing proportionately, yet we're stuck at 3.1 million or 3.2 million graduate students. I think, again, one of the solutions there, and in fact, they're very willing. We looked at the age cohorts here. We have a very willing base here that wants to go on. We have almost 2/3 of individuals that want to go on and learn and get their post-baccalaureate certificate or degree. So they also want to learn online. One of the things that we're finding out here, and I think this is kind of a blurry message here, is the importance of the brand has decreased. I think what actually happens with this cohort of potential learners here is they go and search the internet like crazy. Then they lock into 2 or 3 institutions, preferred institutions here. They don't really start off with saying, hey, I want to be at Harvard, or I want to be at Maryland or whatever. I think that they start going to the institution that they lock in. They make a lot of decisions even before you hear about them, but they lock into 2 or 3 institutions in terms of their evoked set. There's some research out there by another marketing company that shows that that on average, the average learner, when they go back and re-engage with a college, undergraduate or graduate, they're down to 2 institutions. One institution they want to go to and a backup institution, maybe a third institution. But the brand, we feel like the value of the brand, you've either got to spend a lot of money in that marketplace, or they've made up their mind even before you can impact them. So what we're finding out is the program of study, and that follows with a lot with Carol Aislanian, what she told us many years ago in her book, adult learners today. But what's most important is specific program of study, and then the institution or the brand. But I would argue that the delivery method is actually probably more important at this point, because you can look at those percentages there. It's a coin flip about which one is which, but regardless, they're both very important. We've kind of moved to more of a fully online model here, or a hybrid model. We also asked why folks had disengaged from applying to graduate school. And ironically here, it says 62% have said that they're not able to easily find basic information. We've done a lot of mystery shopping. We've seen a lot of websites that are Web 2.0 and Web 1.0 in some cases. They can't find information very well. We know of one institution that when they self-audited themselves, it took 25 clicks to get to the application. It's just that people were spinning around like crazy. 41% said being required to provide too many personal details. And so we've done a lot of research on that, and we find that in the initial inquiry, to ask somebody what their email address, what their first and last name is pretty acceptable. And how did you hear about us? You surely should not ask for a phone number at this point, even though there are some institutions that have managed that well. I'll just throw out like Maryland Global Campus, Florida International. A bunch of institutions have managed getting the phone number well and managing it and not abusing it. At the application stage, some people feel like the application fees were too expensive. You know what? I just questioned whether or not application fees are needed. I kind of feel like it's a money grab to get a few more millions of dollars or $100,000. There are so many institutions that are waiving their application fees as a promotional element there. I think either Arizona or Arizona State here. When I looked here, it was about 1 in 3 are waiving their application fees. And so is that something that could cause disengagement? Potentially. So let me try to wrap things up on this. We've actually, in this collegiate report, you'll be able to find this flowchart document and what they want to give up in the initial inquiry. I apologize for it being so small, but they'll give you email, and 93% says email is acceptable. First name, 92%. Last name, 87%. Program of study, 75%. Phone number, 68%. But on the follow-up contact, phone number goes up to 83% now. And as they approach application, phone number is 91%. So unless you have a good way to manage and not harassing people on their cell phones or bombarding them with calls, managing that phone number is so critical. If they give you that cell phone number, you've got to guard that with a gold. So this flow chart is a very important thing. We also know what are the top reasons for disengagement at these various steps here. Can't easily find the basic program information on an institution's website. That's when they leave the inquiry stage. At the follow-up stage, inability to answer my questions here. I secret shop at least one institution a month on average. And it's amazing that when I ask what I don't think is a challenging question, how many people just point me back to a website, which I don't think is acceptable or can't answer it. So interesting, challenging things here. So my final thoughts here is that we've got to be more deliberate in terms of this adult learner. They are challenging. They are fragile. They are savvy here. They have preferred brands. They're influenced, obviously, as we know with TikTok. They're also influenced by their parents. And so there's some real challenging marketing things that we need to be thinking about. I think the whole social media piece is extremely important. I've been advocating for greater use of TikTok, even though a lot of institutions like saying, oh, it's banned from our servers here. There's a lot of institutions that are working their way around that because it's a natural tool. Even though folks are told they can't use it here, that's where their learners are at. And that's how they're being influenced. I think it's one of the most effective tools there. Instagram Reels, Facebook paid search, those play to a different demographic sometimes, but obviously Instagram and TikTok play to that demographic that I made note of. So one of the pieces of research I also want to point out here is UPCEA and Inside Track did a study, and they did a study on the pipeline. When someone inquires with you, you have on average 117 days to get to them. The average matriculation rate on the credit side is 10.4%. On the non-credit side, you only have about 70 days. And in fact, a lot of people impulse buy in terms of non-credit. But on the credit side, you should be looking at processes that get you under 60 or 90 days in terms of when they make an inquiry. I'd say 60 days you'd want to strive for. Stealth applications are up. We've done this study multiple times, and stealth applications are up, and sometimes that's deliberate. A lot of these learners, they actually want to do self-service. There's a lot of institutions out there. I'll name Maryland and I'll name Penn State, where I used to work at. They do a great job of having the user find information, find videos, they answer their own question. So when they come in on an inquiry or they come in directly on an application, then I know institutions that don't know what they're really doing, and they actually find out that 60%, and one institution in particular had 60% of their application stealth. They didn't know where they came from, what marketing came from. These are all things which you need to have a strategy for. So the other thing here's the other study that I want to point out, the third study that we have, and this is more of this is going to be released. I've been told that I cannot release much of this because on December 3rd to the 5th, we're having a conference where the whole full reports can be released. But UPCEA has been known for their member surveys, and we have a survey of our marketing people, and this is only about 51 people at this point, but we're showing an increase of marketing staff. I've also asked for the outsourcing numbers. Just because they're increasing marketing staff doesn't mean they're decreasing outsourcing as well. Strategic outsourcing is very, very important, especially on the marketing side of things. So I'm waiting to see those numbers right now because right now there's no final report. The other number that we're also seeing is marketing budgets are slowly increasing as well. Institutions are seeing the need to invest money into marketing finally to generate more enrollments. It's kind of like almost like a make or break situation over the next 5 or 10 years here. We got to pour money into marketing. So I can release that number in the future, but coming out of the pandemic, that was about 8% that they were taking 8% of gross revenues was being invested in marketing. About half of that was being put to salaries. About half of that was being put to either outsourcing or paid media. Now that number went up to, I think, 10% a year ago. And now I think there's a new number that's a slight percentage increase than the previous number here. But we're seeing a growing number of staffing and a growing marketing budget as well. Outsourcing numbers will come out in December. To get to the full report, it will be released after our MEMS conference, shameless advertising. So I'm going to wrap things up here because I think we have about 5 or 6 minutes to do questions, or maybe even a little bit beyond that. But what I want to talk about is we've really got to understand our adult learner better. They're not avocado toast people here. They're very frugal, very intelligent, very informed, very savvy, very influenced generation here. But we've also got to look at, we just can't offer 120 credit degrees. We got to build stackability. If you want to sell your degree, make it as the culmination of a lot of things here. We've also got to better engage our employers, but we've got to really understand this relationship between this very kind of fragile Gen Zer and our own situations here. Because when we secret shop people, one of the studies that we released not too long ago with a company called Search Influence was that we showed that we gave a report card to our own institutions. We secret shop 100 of our own institutions, and we gave our members basically, I think, a D plus or a C minus. The search engine optimization was wrong. The way they greeted people was wrong, and there's a lot of room for improvement. Navigation was challenged. There's a lot of room for improvement. So I threw a lot out there, but I'm really trying to push more that we've got a lot of resources to give to you. We also partner with our friends at Carnegie, where we can get you a lot of this research as well. We'll also make this presentation available to you as well. So let me end there on questions and answers and invite Kevin back as well.
Yep. Thanks, Jim. Amazing presentation. We do have some questions from a few of the folks out here in the audience. The first one is from Caroline. She said, "What are your thoughts on the idea that creating online programs will essentially cannibalize the current in-person student body?" She says that the leadership is hesitant to create an online program for the worry that it'll replace their in-person model. Is there something that you're seeing? Is online the inevitable future to increasing enrollments?
Well, I think online is an inevitable future, but I think they can be mutually exclusive too. I think people come on campus for, to basically have a rite of passage, to break away from their being in a protective bubble for 18 years. I think that campus-based program is important here. And I think but I think it's also important to realize that a lot of students that used to commute to campus are now searching online. So if you're not offering a competitive product I'm not like saying offer everything, but you've got to offer things that you're good in at the price point that you're used to in a value area. Working with business and industry, I think you can actually be that commuting student, that institution for that commuting student. I also think the online piece here, I'm not like saying move everything online. Move the stuff that you're good at online and build stackability toward it. We've done a number of cannibalization studies here, and we find the amount of cannibalization is very, very small. And if you're not actually building toward something like that anyway, then someone else is going to cannibalize you or steal your students. So you've got to build these other outlets for students to come in because I think that, a lot of this cannibalization thinking, some of it's very real, but a lot of it is like, look where the market is going. And there's a lot of best practices out there where you can have your cake and eat it too here. You can build out parallel tracks here. I'll just bring out, University of Illinois Springfield. 10 years ago, those discussions were happening on their campus. Should we actually 20 years ago? And they built out a number of programs, and their online programs help supplement what's happening on their campuses. They were able to add more faculty in their stats department. They had a stats department of a handful of people. They doubled or tripled the size of their online stats as a result of that, and were able to add more faculty. So I think that there's a lot to be said about how do you look at this. I just hope that when you say it's going to cannibalize, that it's data driven and not fear driven. And a lot of the fear comes from faculty.
Mm-hmm. When in relation to what you were talking before about the stackable model, there's a question from Alex. He said, has there been any research into what disciplines are most compatible with the stacked model of accreditation?
Well, there's a lot of early success that was done on technology in healthcare. You got certificates. You got a lot of it was licensure based as well. But if you look at a number of institutions that are out there, and if you even look at the most recent National Student Clearinghouse data, there's a lot of positive enrollment trend out there. There's three or four institutions I think about when I think about stackability and success of it. If you look at Indiana University, they've built out a whole stackable portfolio there. You also look at Maryland Global. You look at Penn State University. I bring those two up pretty regularly here. You look at all three of these institutions are growing. And then you look at the National Student Clearinghouse numbers; those are growing. There's a number of institutions that are investing into this that are seeing positive enrollment growth. Is enrollment growth happening across the board? No, not across the industry, but there's a lot of best practices that are happening out there. It also requires good marketing too. You've got to market the whole kind of occupational pathway in order to do this right. You can't hide these programs and say, oh, by the way, look over here, you have a certificate in this and it fits into that. You've got to tell students how to do that.
Perfect. Another question from Carlos. He said, do you think the development of AI will persuade or dissuade future students from pursuing higher education? Affordability is definitely a factor, but looking it from the perspective of a student, why pursue a degree if AI would be able to do their intended career goals?
That's one of the bigger challenges here. And AI is and I'm not going to claim to be an AI expert. I think AI is going to revolutionize a lot of things out there. But I think, for the next, 10 or 15 years, we're still going to need people and brains to maintain this economy that we have in front of us. And it's a growing economy. Yes, there's debate about, how strong our economy is, but it's still a growing economy. You look at the numbers here, and you cannot just transform everything overnight. And then we can move to a robotics or an automated economy here where, our cars can be self-driving if we let them, but we're going to need to have folks that, replace problem solve, replace, parts and whatever. Yes, AI can do that. We can evolve our economies to, just like we did with the internet and the cloud-based generation that we're currently in. We've been in this thing for the last 25 years. We can evolve our economy to be that way. But it takes higher education to not be wedded to a 120 credit degree curriculum in everything that they do. I think AI is going to solve a lot of I think AI will actually look at how can you be a great accountant? You don't really need 120 credits. You need 91 credits now, and then you need this other credits in your next 5 years. I think AI is going to start doing that. I think AI is going to help point students into better relationships where they're most likely to succeed. I've seen some great web demos where where I saw this gentleman, he put his whole transcripts in here, he put his whole LinkedIn profile here, and he actually dropped it into an AI, and the AI told him what school to go to and what he should excel in, and what degree or certificate he should go in, and what is he weak at. So there's a lot of that will happen, and that I don't really have a great answer on how it's going to exactly impact enrollments here, but I would rather have good product out there, good market out there, and extend my product life cycle at least for the next decade or two.
Excellent. Another question from Anne. She said something that my institution is struggling with is what does hybrid mean to grad students? Any thoughts on what they mean? Like in-person class every other week or online class only and in-person opportunities to connect to faculty, staff, and other students?
Well, I think the hybrid side of things here is if it's a camp, you've got to really decide whether or not you have a campus-based student or not. Is this student campus-based and they're there anyway, and their hybrid is that you just give them a little bit of relief from the classroom every so often. That's one model. Then you can have another model, which is also considered hybrid, is a low residency model where you can actually have people do 90% of the work and they come together every so often. That's one way. But one of the things that we saw in our research here is that everybody wants hybrid. Hybrid is the best of both worlds here. But when you put it into full operation, there's a few campuses out there that they're not convinced it really works. They find their students choosing one or the other. Like if it's a campus-based thing where they get a break off here, some of them want more interaction there, they want face-to-face. But if it's an online situation where it's online heavy here, and they can come to classes here, they just go to online anyway. Or they go listen to the recording here. I think your strategy around hybrid you've really got to challenge it about, because I think everybody wants that personal touch, but it's whether, especially coming out of the pandemic, but it's whether or not they'll truly use that hybrid approach, or when that you can force them into it with a low residency model. But I think if you give them that open flexibility model where they're already campus based or not, do they come to class or not, or do they actually record the video, listen to the recordings? I question whether that hybrid is working in that case.
I think we got time for just two more. We had a question from Madison. She said, do you typically see a correlation between the state of the economy and how many adult students take online classes?
That's kind of an urban legend from the past here that, when the economy's up, the adult learner doesn't come back, and vice versa. I look at this, I would actually just zero sum everything that you're doing at this point and say, okay, how can we look at our product in our programs better? How can we actually adapt our programs so they'll fit into a future economy? I just look at I think the economy is growing and it's going to continue to grow. And I think it's going to morph itself into becoming more and more automated as we go as well. And I think, we're seeing a lot of pressure on institutions and kind of a lot of companies kind of trying to maintain wealth there and cut costs here and finding automated solutions here. So, can we look at when that's a 3, 5, or 10-year window or 20-year window, and how do we integrate, training, certificates, and education on top of certain careers or not? Or how can you actually take an existing curriculum, such as, let's look at liberal arts and humanities. That's one area that's been on the decline here. In a people-oriented society here, I question whether or not, that degree, could that actually have certificates and digital badges along the way that makes somebody with a history degree valuable in terms of a corporate environment or not? Having those critical thinking skills. I think a lot of that, I think we've got to look at our economy, and we've got to look at our curriculum a little bit more in tandem, and also make sure that we've got enough representation from the advisory committees that are actually employers in this, and not just ones that are high donors.
We have one last, this isn't really a question, it was more of a statement from Virginia. She said she spoke with a parent yesterday who said that their daughter, who's now a sophomore in college, would only look at a university's Instagram page. She wouldn't even visit the websites. And she said that the parents are using, schools' websites, maybe even more than the children.
Well, I think all the research I show says the contrary, that websites are still highly used here. And in fact, they use them for kind of that canned mail that we used to get through snail mail, through the post office. Is that the information that you need to find is not coming in the mail. It's on their website, and most people still go there, whether or not they like it or not, whether or not they enjoy the experience or not. But I think my observation here is that half the websites out there are great and they look great, and the other half don't look great or don't perform well. And it's a representation of your brand. So I think it's something where it may not be the sexiest thing or the most exciting billboard that you have out there, but it's something that is so important because they're not going to be able to find or navigate their way through Instagram in terms of finding every piece of information. But
Hmm.
you can actually organize it in a way on a website that you can find it. You can find testimonials influencing certain pathways, certain information better. But I've seen some miserable websites out there where it's a kiss of death, and especially filling out a form. I had one institution in the South here. It had 27 required fields for me to fill out an inquiry form, and that's just lazy. And that's what they call Generation Z calls the ick. And the ick is when something chases you away. And that comes through their dating preferences as well. When they date online, if someone says something like ick, if they, and I'm going to be political here, it's like if they have a Harris Walls or if they have a MAGA hat or whatever, that could be an ick for somebody of a different party. That's what actually the ick is for somebody, is filling out a form that's too long. There's a lot of ick that you've got to look at, you got to look for on your own sites regarding Generation Z.
Well, Jim, this was definitely a very interesting topic, as you can tell by a lot of the questions, and we certainly want to thank you for your session today, and thank everyone for joining and staying on and asking questions. If you have any need for help throughout the conference, as I mentioned earlier, please email us at conferences. It's with an S at carnegiehighered.com, or message us through the Ask Organizers Anything section in the Hoover Community Board. We have another session coming up at 12 o'clock, which is marketing your graduate programs, and which includes stats, trends, and to-dos. As I mentioned, that gets started at 12. But again, thank you so much, Jim, for all this amazing information. You can see here on the screen, Jim has included some information for follow-up. And again, if you have any questions, his email address is here, and also his LinkedIn information. So again, thank you, Jim. Thanks everyone for your time, and have a good rest of your afternoon. Thank you.